The damp cave floor was stained with the blood of a goblin who once held onto his human heart. Commander Loder looked down with pure disgust, his platinum armor reflecting the flickering torchlight of the dungeon. Beside him stood the holy maiden Ephira, her angelic face a mask for the demonic joy she felt in her captive's pain. They had slaughtered the woman Lin Tian protected, labeling her a traitor for showing kindness to a monster. Lin Tian realized too late that in this world, human morality was merely a weapon for the powerful to wield. The searing heat of Ephira's holy magic burned into his skin, a final blessing before his life faded into blackness. In the void of death, a digital interface flickered to life, offering a second chance to the foolish goblin. With a twisted smile, he chose to restart his life, carrying the memories of every scream and every betrayal. He was back in the cave, 1 week before the humans would arrive to rescue their prey. The system activated, presenting him with his first life simulation to test the outcomes of his revenge. He saw a future where he warned the tribe, only to see them all wiped out by Loder's overwhelming power. To survive, he needed better equipment and a heart of stone, beginning with the purchase of a swift elven blade. Lin Tian lurked in the shadows of a narrow passage, watching the 2 human guards who stood at the cave's exit. The guards laughed about their plan to kill any survivors, unaware that the predator was now behind them. With a sudden burst of speed, Lin Tian's new blade tasted human blood for the very first time. He watched the first guard fall, his eyes devoid of the pity that had once led to his ruin. The second guard begged for mercy, showing a medallion of his family in a desperate attempt to stay alive. Lin Tian saw the hidden knife behind the man's back, and ended the deception with a single, brutal strike. The path to vengeance was now open, and Lin Tian stepped into the forest, leaving his human self behind. Far off in the distance, he heard the sounds of Ephira and Loder arriving at the empty cave. Ephira was furious that her intelligent toy had vanished, her sadistic curiosity piqued by his escape. Lin Tian traveled deep into the woods, his primary goal now to find a tribe he could mold into an army. He encountered a goblin girl named Ouya, who spoke with a clarity and intelligence rare for her kind. She belonged to a nearby village where she was bullied, and Lin Tian saw her as the key to his evolution. He followed her to a massive goblin settlement, a place where strength was the only law that mattered. The current chief, a cruel priest, demanded Lin Tian be slaughtered and served as meat for the tribe. Using his human knowledge, Lin Tian offered to forge iron weapons that would make the tribe invincible against humans. The chief gave him 3 days to prove his worth, unaware he was inviting his own replacement into the village. Lin Tian worked tirelessly, smelting ore and training a group of goblins to find the materials he needed. When the other goblins bullied Ouya, Lin Tian stood between them, asserting his dominance over the weak. To reach the legendary status he needed, he proposed a union with Ouya to create a new, stronger lineage. She accepted his hand, choosing to trust the only being who had ever shown her anything resembling kindness. The system pinged as their union granted Lin Tian a massive surge in his attributes and stats. Now stronger than ever, he returned to the village to deliver the weapons and claim his throne. The chief attempted to poison his victory meal, but Lin Tian's system had already warned him of the trap. In a blur of iron and blood, Lin Tian struck down the old chief, his head rolling across the clearing. The tribe fell to their knees in fear and awe, acknowledging their new, powerful master. Lin Tian stood atop the chief's bone throne, looking out at his new subjects with eyes full of ambition. His first act as chief was to rename the tribe and prepare them for a war that would shake the human world. The outcast had become a king, and the time for human justice was officially at an end. The blood on Lin Tian's daggers began to steam as the cold mountain air hit the fresh kill. He turned his gaze toward the flickering campfires of the goblin settlement nestled in the valley below. To these creatures, strength was the only law, and the current priest was a weakling living on borrowed time. Lin Tian descended the slope with the silent grace of a predator who had already seen his enemy's death in a vision. As he entered the village, the smaller goblins recoiled in instinctive fear at the aura surrounding him. The old priest stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he sensed a direct challenge to his long-standing rule. Lin Tian did not waste words, lunging forward with speed that defied the physical limits of a common goblin. The bone staff shattered into fragments as Lin Tian's fist connected with the priest's chest. Before the elder could even scream, a blade was plunged deep into his throat to silence his treachery forever. He stood over the corpse and let out a guttural roar that echoed through the dark woods. The system interface flickered in his vision, confirming that the tribe was now under his absolute control. Survival required more than just leadership, it required a biological revolution of the goblin lineage. He scanned the hovels until his eyes landed on a female goblin who possessed a rare high-tier physical potential. To build an army of monsters, he would need to pass down the gene devour traits to a new generation. He claimed her that night, marking the beginning of a lineage that would soon terrify the world of men. However, common goblin blood was only the foundation. He needed the essence of higher races to truly evolve. Reports from his scouts indicated that an elven scouting party was passing through the northern borders. Leading the group was Princess Alara, a high-ranking elf known for her powerful light magic and noble bloodline. Lin Tian led his best hunters to the edge of the elven forest, setting a trap fueled by his past knowledge. They waited for hours, perfectly still, as the unsuspecting elves rode directly into the kill zone. On his signal, the goblins released a barrage of poisoned arrows that brought the horses down in a screaming heap. Lin Tian moved like a ghost, intercepting the princess before she could even draw her bow. He used his superior strength to pin her against a tree, ignoring the searing burns of her light magic. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized this was no ordinary, mindless goblin beast. He whispered a promise of a new era into her ear before knocking her unconscious with a blunt blow. The remaining elves were slaughtered, their bodies left as a warning to those who dared enter goblin territory. Back at the camp, Lin Tian prepared the ritual that would bind the elven princess to his bloodline. Weeks passed, and the first of the new generation began to emerge from their cocoons. These were not the weak, green-skinned runts of the past. They were tall, muscular, and intelligent hybrids. Lin Tian trained them personally, instilling the discipline of a human army into their monstrous bodies. The Gene Devour skill allowed him to absorb the power of every beast the tribe hunted, fueling his own growth. His skin began to darken to a deep obsidian, and horns started to sprout from his forehead, marking his evolution into a hobgoblin lord. He knew the humans would soon notice the silence from their northern outposts. The Holy Order of Light was likely already preparing a cleansing mission to investigate the disappearance of the princess. Let them come. His tribe was no longer a pack of scavengers, but a nation of killers. He began the next phase of his plan, the subjugation of the local dragon nest to obtain the ultimate genetic material. If he could force a dragon to submit, no army on the continent could stand against his hybrid offspring. Every waking moment was dedicated to refining the combat skills of his sons and daughters. The system pinged with a new notification. Warning, the Holy Maiden's expedition has departed Bright Town. A cold smile spread across Lin Tian's face as he remembered the feel of the Holy Maiden's whip on his back. He would not kill her immediately. She would witness the total destruction of everything she held holy. But just as he prepared for the human arrival, a strange, dark portal began to open in the center of the camp. A creature far older than any dragon stepped through the rift, its presence causing the very ground to wither. It looked at Lin Tian and spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding stones, revealing it knew his secret. The simulation system suddenly froze, turning blood red with a message he had never seen before. The message warned that a world-level deviation had occurred, and his knowledge of the future was now useless. As the cloaked stranger raised a hand, the scream of a dragon echoed from the sky, but it was a scream of agony. Lin Tian realized his carefully planned vengeance was about to be interrupted by a force from the abyss. The real game had only just begun, and the price of failure was no longer just death, but eternal erasure. Lin Tian stood upon a jagged cliff, staring down at the unsuspecting lights of Bright Town. The simulation system flickered before his eyes, confirming the optimal moment for the dragon's arrival. Behind him, a legion of evolved goblins gripped their obsidian weapons in total silence. He remembered the smell of his own burning flesh in the dungeon 3 years prior. A deafening roar shattered the silence as a massive shadow blotted out the stars. The Dragon Mother descended upon Bright Town, unleashing a torrent of emerald fire. Lin Tian raised his hand and signaled his tribe to descend into the chaos. Panic erupted in the streets as humans scrambled to escape the dual threat of fire and monsters. Commander Loder emerged from the barracks, desperately trying to rally his terrified knights. Lin Tian landed before him like a dark bolt of lightning, his eyes glowing with malice. Loder paled as he recognized the face of the weakling he had once tortured. With a single motion, Lin Tian severed the commander's sword arm before he could strike. The commander fell to his knees, screaming in the very same tone Lin Tian once had. Lin Tian ignored the cries and ordered his guards to drag the commander to the center of town. Inside the great cathedral, Holy Maiden Aphira prayed for a miracle that would never come. The massive oak doors burst open as Lin Tian's shadow stretched across the holy floor. He whispered her name, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 deaths. Ephira backed away, her divine light flickering and dying in the presence of his dark aura. He secured her with anti-magic chains, neutralizing the power of the Holy Order once and for all. Outside, the vampire mercenaries arrived to claim their share of the spoils as agreed. Lin Tian handed them the city's treasury, buying their temporary loyalty for the coming war. A sudden flash of silver light announced the arrival of the legendary sword Saintess. She brandished her holy blade, promising to purge the goblin filth from the world. Lin Tian simply smiled, having already simulated this fight 100 times in his mind. The two clashed in a blur of silver and black, the shockwaves leveling nearby buildings. He used the Gene Devour power to temporarily mimic the speed of the elven princess he had conquered. The sword Saintess gasped as the Goblin King moved faster than any humanly possible. He struck the weak point in her stance, a flaw revealed only by his system's deep analysis. Her holy sword shattered into 1,000 pieces, the fragments raining down like dying stars. With the Saintess defeated, the remaining human army broke and fled into the night. Lin Tian stood in the center of the ruined town, his vengeance finally nearing its completion. He gathered his captives, Ephira, Loder, and the Saintess to face their final judgment. The Dragon Mother landed behind him, bowing her massive head in a show of absolute submission. He declared the birth of a new empire, where goblins would no longer be the prey of men. He looked into Ephira's eyes and told her that her death would be the foundation of his throne. The system pinged, notifying him that the quest for vengeance was 100% complete. He took his seat on a throne, fashioned from the armor of the fallen human commanders. His goblin children, born of royal bloodlines, stood tall as the new nobility of the land. Lin Tian closed his eyes, finally shedding the trauma of his past life for good. The world now belonged to the Goblin King, and his legend would be written in the blood of those who dared to defy him.